Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode, the HR one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. We know that this podcast is primarily about learning, but HR goes hand in hand with learning, and it's great to hear from another part of the people function. We have, again, been incredibly lucky to have two super guests to walk through this topic with you. Our first guest is Joanne Whitlie. Joanne is a senior HR projects and operations leader with over 18 years of global experience. She founded her company, WHR, to combine her corporate background with a deep understanding of people and psychology. Joanne turns strategy into action, delivering sustainable, people-first solutions that create real impact. Through her consultancy, she leads organisations through people challenges, transformation, growth and cultural change. Our next guest is Joanne Whitlie. Joanne is a data-driven people and culture professional at Lloyds Banking Group, specialising in colleague insights, leadership and innovation. With a background spanning learning, recruitment and strategic HR, her job is to blend analytical rigour with human-centred design to drive cultural transformation. A passionate advocate for inclusive leadership and continuous learning, she brings curiosity, empathy and bold thinking to every challenge, whether mentoring, podcasting or reimagining the future of work. Recorded in the beginning of June 2025, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Joanne and Joanne talking about HR.
My name's Joanne Whitlie and I'm here with Joanne Whitlie on today's podcast. We're thrilled to be here with you today, and as someone who's very dedicated to their career in HR, today we'll be diving into some super important topics within HR, and we hope to share the insights that will inspire and motivate you, and especially the incredible women who are in this field. So over to you, Joanne, if you'd like to introduce why you're here today.
Hi, I'm Joanne Whitlie. I'm really excited to be here today. Worked in HR for 18 years and I'm very passionate about learning in the HR area. And I think one of the big topics and consistencies I've seen across my career, having worked with, hundreds and hundreds of HR leaders who are women across the globe, is that I find our approach to learning is very consistent. So I would be interested, Man, on your views on that. But I find that we all approach learning in a very consistent way in terms of we've got a lot of attention to detail because we've spent a lot of time in policy, a lot of time in process, and we all really want to achieve and really do our best for our organisations. And sometimes I find that that can come at a personal price for an HR professional for themselves, not necessarily given enough time or attention to their own development. What have you found? Have you found something similar in your journey?
I completely agree with what you've said there, yeah, because I've had the privilege of working across several dynamic HR functions within completely different industries. So I've worked from colleague insights to people strategy and also within the learning and development team at quite a large bank and building society, which was nationwide. And I've also done a lot of recruitment. So I know the sort of things that people bring to what people expect of women in HR or even just general HR and learning roles as well. So whether it's designing engagement dashboards, facilitating group inductions, or embedding insights into like our well-being and DE&I strategies within HR, I think my focus has always been on making people feel heard, valued, and empowered. And I think that's what's really important for me within HR. I think I don't just work in HR, I live and breathe the belief that people are at the heart of every organization. And for me, that learning is a big part of that. And I feel like for women that work in HR, they probably should have some sort of background in learning where they're able to come and bring that into their roles.
Yeah, I think as well, though, I think to be a good HR leader, in my experience, it's something about having a passion for learning. So there's the structured and there's the theory behind HR. There's the qualifications that you see. There's a lot of discussion about, CIPD versus non-CIPD. I do think there's a lot of merit in sort of learn through experience, learning on the job, having compassion for learning. So I think for me, a big thing that I find within HR is the perception of HR outside of HR. So you've got leaders within HR who have an understanding of all of the elements that go within HR. I mean, it's so varied. Like you said, you've got your L&D, you've got your E&I, you've got your vibrant or your living initiatives, keeping well and healthy. But outside of an HR organization, I think there's still a lot of learning and development for people in leadership roles outside to really have an understanding of what HR means to an organization. So yes, we are, and I believe wholly that we're at the center of every successful organization and the heart of every initiative. However, I think there's a big opportunity for learning outside the HR group of just how strategic being in an HR role can be. So, for example, I've asked a lot of people, especially since I've moved into my own consultancy, what does HR mean to you? Because you have to do marketing, chat, and whatever. And everybody seems to say it's about people, issues, disciplinaries, and grievances. So that's a really big, important part of HR. However, it's so much more strategic than that. And I think for people wanting to learn about HR's career or coming into HR as an organization, I think to learn about that in the different roles and areas and just how much you can get a diverse career from being HR is a massive learning opportunity for any sort of business or leadership team out there. So if I'm looking at learning sort of inside HR, but also for people learning about HR. I don't know if you've had that perception as well, Deman.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with your point where you've said like people have this opinionated view of HR just being all about disciplinaries. And to me, it's like that's not all what HR is. There's so much more. There's such a diverse variety of roles that fall within that HR. So I believe HR is the conscious of any entire business. And I feel like as women in HR or anyone who works for HR, they're like sort of the storytellers behind the culture of that business. And we're like the architects of inclusion and the champions of growth. Because without HR, I don't think there could be any sort of potential growth within any business or organization. Because at the end of the day, we are who drive the people who drive the business. So we're really key people within any organization. And I feel like we have the power, as someone who works in HR, we have the power to shape not just the policies, but also people's experiences, whether that be through learning, whether that be through recruitment or any other sort of area that falls within HR. And that's just a responsibility that I personally take really seriously. So I currently work for Lloyd's Banking Group and I work a lot on colleague experience. So I do a lot of the colleague insights work and surveys, internal surveys, but also I believe I serve those who serve our customers, and that's a really key part of my day-to-day role within HR. And I think if I didn't have all this learning behind me in terms of what different things I should bring to that role, I probably wouldn't be making such an impact that I probably am.
Yeah, and I think you picked up on a big topic for me there as well, is that from my experience of any change, and I've led large scale global transformations, is that HR or a people professional are really the powerhouse of any large change within any large organization, because really we need help with the strategy and the design, but we need to get the people on board with that change. So as you talk about storytelling, I believe a lot in an employee journey. I use a lot of the word reason to believe. So what is the reason for the people and organization to buy into that change and believe in that change, and educating leaders on what they need to do to really engage their employees to come on that journey. I see a lot of that in organizations that are struggling to change from a culture standpoint. They may have merged, they may have acquired other staff or people. The leadership know where they want to be, but they really need that capability. So I'm focusing on sort of my HR capability, taking that and giving that into the organization to help them really deliver what it is that they want to deliver. I think that's really a big thing around change. And you touched on there, demand about sort of employee surveys and employee satisfaction surveys. I'm a big fan of data and satisfaction surveys. I have found in my career that they only tell you so much. So it's about educating leaders on the data that's in front of you, but also the data that you're not seeing. So what I like to call the water cooler culture, how we educate our HR leaders to really understand that culture and how we take that on into the business so that we don't change things that are working or go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you've touched on something really interesting there where you kind of said like, yes, the data will tell us certain points, but we need to also stop waiting for people to kind of take their own action. We need to empower leaders. We need to stop waiting around for permission from HR or permission from, senior leaders and actually start leading with a purpose. And I think when you're working in HR, you come from a position to kind of influence that change, influence that change in the workplace culture. And yes, the data will show you certain things that may need to change or certain things that may be working well in certain areas of the business. But I do think there needs to be a sense of a culture of trust. And if colleagues have already built that up, then they'll be able to more openly speak up about things that might not be going so well. And yeah, I think having that, advocacy for equality and being able to have that trust in your leaders, whether that be HR leaders or any other leaders within the workplace, I think it's really important to kind of listen to those individuals, not just through surveys, but on a day-to-day base, because every action can be taken once every voice has been heard. And that's something I strongly believe in.
Yeah, and I think as well that ultimately, when you work with people, you understand that you've got a diverse sort of set of personalities. I've got a psychology degree, so I could talk about people all day. I love it. But you've got different personality types. You've got people who are in certain situations and handle if they're stressed or if they're anxious or if they're upset in different situations. And think as an HR professional, that's a real skill set that I think a lot of us have, that we can deliver a message in a way that is received by that individual in the way that they need to receive it at that time. So I think it's really great. Like I say, I am into surveys. I think they're really great, but as an HR professional, I don't think that's enough. I think you need to be also hearing and seeing and listening to all of the other areas that are going on in the business. And I think it's our job as HR professionals to educate business leaders on that as well. So just to really see that 360 view.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on the fact that yes, surveys are good, but that's not the only sort of listening activity a HR function within a business should be doing. So I'm a great advocate for focus groups because I think that really brings people's opinions when you're together in a group and with random people in a room. I think everyone just feels like once they've got that sense of trust, they can just really open up and share what's going on. So yeah, I feel like there's so much listening activity that a HR sector can do within a business. And I've kind of seen like firsthand, whether it was in the automotive industry, whether it was in a law firm that I used to work at, or whether it was through my university degree. I've kind of seen firsthand how strategic insight can shift people's mindsets, and it kind of influences leadership and their decisions, and kind of create an environment where everyone, regardless of background, are able to kind of have their say and succeed within their roles. So I know a lot of people say this, and yes, we do support the business working in HR, but HR isn't just a support function, it is a strategic driver. And I feel like people who work in HR need to own that and really bring that to life and be like, we're the people that can bring the change to this organization as a whole by doing so many different things, whether it's surveys, whether it's focus groups, or whether it's even delivering like action plans or mentoring other people, as you mentioned, leaders specifically.
Yeah. And I've mentored a lot of leaders as well who are sort of struggling with sort of the overwhelming sense of HR leaders, the overwhelming sense of what to do first and how to tackle things, because we are really looked at within an organization of what I call the fixers. Everyone comes to HR leaders when they've got their issues or their challenges, and it's sort of very vague and very vast what we need to get involved with. And I think what I find is that that can lead to HR leaders, and I've found this for women in general as well as HR leaders, is that we take on too much and we want to fix everything for everybody. We want to be there for everybody. We want to be at every meeting. We're helping engage everybody else in their learning, their development plans. And sometimes it's really difficult, and I've been there myself, where you need to prioritize your own learning and your own development as well. Because if you don't have the skills in the understanding and you haven't taken that developmental opportunity, then you aren't there to deliver those initiatives to the business. So that's something I've found, and I think that can potentially lead as well to a lot of burnout potentially in people who are sort of thinking they need to change professionally, profession in the HR field, because they're just deluged a lot of the time. So I don't know if you found that in your side of things as well, the man.
Yeah, so me being quite fairly new, because I've jumped ship quite a few times in different industries, it's always been HR and learning development related. So I used to do training in the automotive industry, which where I'd actually build learning, whether that was systems learning, whether that was just generally telephony role learning, or whether it was the brand learning. So I've kind of facilitated and delivered a lot of learning myself over the years in a completely different industry. And then I've come into the banking world where I work in HR, and I can just see like how much, like how many transferable skills I can bring over in this role. But you've just touched on a really interesting point in terms of you never stop learning yourself. So no matter where you are in your career, I think there's always more that you can learn. And especially when you work in HR, you've always got that perspective of you need to grow with the business. You need to keep learning more about what you can do to improve, because no matter how good an organization or business is, there's always something that you can make better. And if you're not learning as a HR professional constantly about what's going on, how you can improve things, then you're never going to get to that stage.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we recognise that the sort of informal and formal learning, the sort of learning through the job, learning through mentoring, learning through challenging experiences. So I think when I think about learning for as an HR professional, I think there's lots of wonderful avenues for professional learning, but I just think you have to also really focus on those situational areas where you're learning so much and the value that you can bring. And then, like you said, Damani, it's bringing in that sort of perspective and transferable skills and taking that out into the wider organisations that you work for.
Definitely, yeah. What would you say is just a question for you, because I feel like there's something I can learn from you as well, with yours, you being, having a psychology degree. In terms of, what advice would you give to women working in the HR industry, as you mentioned, bringing those transferable skills over and kind of growing in that role? Because you mentioned a lot, there's so many different avenues in terms of learning and bringing those skills to that HR role. So what sort of advice or support would you give?
First of all, I'd say the best advice is to be like a sponge, which sounds very general, but it's basically take every opportunity for learning that you can, whether you feel like it's informal or informal. And I think also as well, like I find women in leadership can be very humble in the HR field. I don't know if you found that. So what I mean by that is that we know internally of all the strategy and all the skills and all the learning that we've had, but might not always be as forthcoming to say that out loud or to remind people of what we've done or talk about what we've done or go to networking events with HR professionals. I went to one earlier in the week. It was absolutely fantastic. Go out and speak to other HR professionals who are doing the job, who've been doing the job for 15, 20 years. It doesn't matter if you've only been doing it 3 to 4 years. They're more than happy to mentor you, I'm sure. And then I like reverse mentoring as well. So the concept where you speak to people who are a little bit newer in the organization and what their perspective of things are, but really being proud and confident in articulating what you have done in the past, the value you can bring, and the experience that you've got. And that can sometimes be quite challenging if you're sitting in a boardroom full of people and the business owners and the business leaders and the finance people are there and they're all talking about an initiative which they really want to roll out and they're really passionate about. But you've got the experience to say, this will not work, or I am concerned about that. And that is absolutely okay to have the power and passion, delivery, to deliver that in the right ways is a question to say, from my experience, I've done X, Y, and Z. My concern could be this. To have that sort of confidence to do that, that is okay. That is part of the role in HR. And I've seen many sort of HR leaders struggle with that confidence, even though they do have the knowledge. So I was kind of say, get yourself out there, get to your networking events and believe in yourself because you can't, no one can kind of say you didn't give that opinion. It's all about the delivery of that in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. I think being someone who's come across from the automotive industry, where being a young female was just coming out of university and going into that industry, and being a young female in a very male dominated environment, it was very challenging. And as much as I kind of overcame a lot of the challenges there, I feel like that probably knocked my confidence somewhat. And then coming into a completely different industry, which was the banking industry for me, the financial world, and not thinking like, I'd always thought to myself, okay, maybe I don't have the skills I've got the skills for the role, but I'm not in this particular industry because I don't know anything about how a bank works and how all of this works. But I think it was the confidence that I built in myself, thinking, but I have those transferable skills that I can make work in a different industry. Whether it's in a completely different industry, I feel like I've got those transferable skills that I can bring into new strategies and new the transformation stuff that was going on within the banking industry. I know you mentioned a lot about going to networking events and kind of putting yourself out there and saying, being confident in yourself. And it was only last year that I'm a huge Karen Brady fan, and every year she does a like networking event for women in tech and business, but also women in HR and different fields that can all come together at Excel London and kind of get together and have a motivational speech from Karen Brady herself, but also learn from other women that have kind of worked their way up in their careers. And there was someone who really interesting there who I didn't know at Nationwide when I worked there, but we've connected on LinkedIn since, and it was so inspirational just hearing how she was knocked down at every point in her career, and now she's come out and she's thinking, yes, I know I can do this. She's believed in herself, and people, she's jumped leaps. Like, she's doing absolutely amazing. So I think the key thing is that people need to believe in themselves.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways to believe in yourself as well, because I've thought about this, because obviously I worked for a large multinational for like 18 years and then moved on to do my own consultancy, is you need to sort of also realize to play to your strengths. So what I mean is that no one person is absolutely fantastic at everything. If there is someone out there, I haven't met them yet, but everyone has something that they're better at, they're good at, they have a natural area, they have a natural passion for. And what I find is if you've got a passion for something, learning is easy. Learning in that space is easy. Reading about things in that area, writing about it, training in it, it's easy for you. So I like anything that's messy. I like cultural change that hasn't quite worked yet, structures that need to be fixed, people merging together and they don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to do it yet. That's the area that I love and I'm passionate in. And that's the area that I sort of try and help other leaders with. So the point being is I see HR leaders all over that are looking for people who are specialists in certain areas, generalists in others, and we're all happy to support each other. So it's also okay to play to your strengths. So I think that's my advice, because there's lots of information out there. Are you a generalist? Are you a specialist? Should you be a generalist? Should you be a specialist? I think it's okay to play to your strengths and do what you enjoy. Because if you enjoy it, you're going to be better at it, from my experience.
And you've got that passion to kind of want to get better at it because you enjoy it. So for myself, I know you mentioned, having different HR qualifications, and there's so many different avenues that people can choose. And me being fairly new to the HR world and being a young female within HR and having worked in learning and development, I'm really passionate about wanting to do a CIPD qualification because I think, one, that enhances the skills that I already have, but also it opens up so many more career opportunities for me. I've done a lot of reading into it, and some of the level 3 CIPD sort of learning was already included in my degree subject. So yeah, I'm really looking forward, and hopefully that will be something that I sign myself up to by the end of the year.
Yeah, it's something that I've looked into as well. I'm going through the accreditation process at the minute. So there's two different angles that you can do for the CIPD. As I understand it, you can do your study and then you can do sort of an accreditation through experience. And I've had a lot of discussions with different HR professionals, whether it's good or bad to have it. So I think it's all about deciding what's best for you as an individual and what you're passionate about. I've found some really great sort of resources online, some really great networking events that are focused on a specific area. So I love organization design, for example, culture links to psychology, links to people. Find it really interesting. Went to a few networking events on that, loved it. Went to some on culture change and personality testing, loved it. So my point being is that if you want to have a passion for learning it linked to HR, pick the area that you are naturally interested in and go for that and maybe become an expert in that, because we don't have to be an expert in every area.
Yeah, I absolutely love that piece of advice.
Yeah, that's definitely my advice. And I think a lot of sort of women in leadership, we can all struggle with asking ourselves too many questions, imposter syndrome, trying to be linked and liked by everybody and do everything for everybody. And then again, that goes back to not allowing yourself the time and the space to focus on your own development and your own leadership. Maybe you lack confidence in an area, or you're feeling overwhelmed. So access to coaching, expert advice, all of that sort of thing. You don't have to do anything on your own. Even if you are considered to be a very senior HR leader, everybody has mentors, coaches, support networks behind them, and that is okay.
Definitely. And I don't think necessarily you have to go out and find yourself in a qualification or accreditation. You can literally just go on LinkedIn, and there's so much on there. You can build your own network through LinkedIn, and there's so much on LinkedIn Learning, which has helped me in my career, as well as all the internal learning that, all my different workplaces have provided. you've got your own like circle of young women or women in HR and learning and development who are wanting to kind of grow in their fields. So yeah, there's so many people out there who are willing to be supportive of others that are trying to build their own career. And I absolutely love that. I'm a really big advocate on LinkedIn of like what I do for work and, trying to inspire whoever I might be able to inspire with my journey.
Yeah. And to be fair, yeah, I've had quite a few people reach out to me on LinkedIn about my journey and how I've done it and what I do and how it works and networking. So it's a wonderful tool to try and find others who are doing similar level roles or have similar interests. So that's definitely a good tool if you don't have time or you don't really want to go to face-to-face events, or it's great to complement that as well. So if I think about how the topics that we've chatted, so we've said that, from a strategic standpoint, the perception of HR outside of HR is that it's very limited to policy and process. We've said that leaders in the organization sometimes don't have enough time or they feel guilty about dedicating their own time to their own sort of qualifications and study, and feeling like we have to offer everything to everybody and be an expert in every area. Is there anything on your mind, man, about what we can suggest for people to overcome that? I've got some ideas as well, but I thought I'll hand over to you first and see if there's anything you want to share.
I just feel like people need to feel empowered to kind of make the change they want to see, especially for women working in HR leadership roles. You have the power to kind of change things, how things are working within their workplace. So I feel like it's all about using the power, using the skills, using your experience to be the change you want to see. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we can only make that change one conversation at a time, one sort of learning journey at a time, one interaction at a time. It's just about being consistent in that messaging and in that journey for HR leaders and anybody who's interacting with HR leaders in their organization.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for joining in this conversation today, Joanne. It's been lovely to meet you, lovely to understand your experience that you've had in the HR space. And also, I will be connecting with you on LinkedIn and
Please
hopefully
do.
we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, it's been great to talk to you as well. Like I say, I'm so passionate in this area. I could talk about it all day, and it's been great to meet you and chat this topic today.
Thank you.
It's always a surprise for us to find out after the recording that guests have not been on a podcast before. We really appreciate the courage it takes to make that first leap, and to do it on our podcast is both an honour and a privilege. As we always say, we're always looking out for new voices, and it's great to find and amplify different voices in learning. A massive thank you to Joanne and Daman for their time and great conversation. Their contact details are in the show notes, along with links from the episode, links to our website, future episodes, and to our donation page. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and next time it's the Adult Learner one. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.